if there's one thing you can remember out of all of this is practice acceptance. Practice acceptance of yourself, practice acceptance of your circumstances, and accept others.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Hustle Up podcast, where we focus on mindset, business, fitness, and relationships, learning with and from motivated millennials, as well as those who have done it before us. Today, my name is Clint Crow.
I'm Jonathan Hussing.
I'm Matt Gammon.
Today, we're sitting down with Jain. Guys, if you get any value from this podcast, please subscribe, like the bell, tune into the channel.
Show some love.
Show some love to the boys. AJ, thank you for being here today. Guys,
Pleasure to be here.
And I want you to give your own intro too, but this is a man who has run a $100 million up company, 9-figure company, lost it all, found himself in the process, is now, and by all means, you are successful again, but something different this time around. It seems like you found a purpose and a drive and a why, which I want to dig into in a few, but for those who are just meeting you for the first time, give us a little bit of your background.
Sure. I am originally from India. I've been in the States for about 38 years. And I grew up in two small towns in India. And we moved to our family town where our family has been living for 100 plus years or longer. I don't know how long. When I was about 7-ish. And when we moved there, I lived in a house with about 33 people in the same house, and there were only 2 toilets. And just very recently, I was at our new apartment in Buckhead that you've been to, Jonathan, and there was this beautiful sunrise, and this is the most expensive real estate in Atlanta, and probably one of the most expensive rental buildings in Atlanta, and I was watching this beautiful sunrise, and I asked myself, how did I get here? And then I asked the question, how can I teach others to feel the joy that I feel every day? And it's just been a journey. So I've been around. I am very happily married. I have 2 children. And I experience a life every day that most people would call success by any measure.
So on one of our 4 topics that's it's prevalent in our podcast and in our world is relationships. And after your first business, and was the .com business, was that your first business or your first venture?
No, I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. So the background that I have is we are a business family, and for generations upon generations. My last name is Jain, Jain, and we are like the business class of entrepreneurs. So it's in my DNA. I have a bug. It's an entrepreneurial bug. So I have started a variety of different companies and have had different levels of successes, but I would say more didn't work probably than the ones that actually did. And then the .com that I did at the end of the 90s, that was an incredible ride because there was a niche that we saw, and we wanted to bring everything together for motorsports race fans, primarily NASCAR fans. And I was able to get licensing deals with some of the biggest brands. We built traffic. You guys are too young to remember that, but at the time, companies used to get valued based on number of eyeballs that came on your website. So we were able to build the traffic, and at one point, we had reached a valuation of about 200 million. And I owned majority of the company. So, I definitely had it in the 9 figures. And then within 9 months, it was all gone. And I had a negative net worth of about $157,000. So I had no job, no money, got divorced. I had 2 kids, and then I had to figure this shit out. I mean, that's life.
What
Yeah.
was your role at that venture when you were active? Were you CEO, COO?
I was the founder, CEO.
Founder and CEO. And so when you were going, I just want to talk about that for a moment, because a lot of people listening are entrepreneurs, and they're going to hit their ups and their downs, and understanding that that's an inevitable part of the process is super important. So when you were leading that, and you started noticing your market hitting a downward shift, how did you react from a managerial standpoint? How were you able to keep your team motivated? All the things were going well. How'd you keep your family motivated, if you did? And how'd you stay on top of yourself mentally during that time period?
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. Just thinking back, there were so many nights where I would wake up completely drenched in sweat. So I'll be honest.
Yeah.
And there were times when I was scared, very scared, but I couldn't tell anybody that I was scared because I had to be strong. I just had to keep going. It was not an option to not keep going. And probably, I mean, some of my investors and members of my board were pretty prominent people, like they're big guys. And one of them, who has extremely large assets, said to me, AJ, you got to look after yourself. You got to look after your family. This is, things come and go. It wasn't just about money. The biggest thing that bothered me more than anything else was that I took investors' money, which I had never done before. And I lost it. It's still, 20 years later, it bothers me. It still bothers me.
Yeah.
So the mindset is, I had to keep reminding myself of why I'm doing this. I just had to keep coming to the center and keep doing it. And instead of thinking of everything that can go wrong and everything that was going wrong, I had to keep thinking of what is the next thing that we need to do? What is one thing that we can do right now to keep going in that direction? And at one point in time, it became absolutely inevitable that it had to go. And that was very difficult.
What was that breaking point or tipping point when you decided at this point it's going to be more of a liability to continue pursuing it than it would be an asset?
We had no money.
Yeah.
And I was tapped out. So there was a series of mistakes. Right before that, I had a job. And I had a budget. My budget at that time in my job was about $50 million a year. So when I started this company, very beginning, we had to make a decision about getting some things printed. And because of the economies of scale, we had to make a decision if we were going to make an order that was going to cost $85,000 versus $5,000. On a per unit basis, it was a lot cheaper to do the bigger order. Like an idiot, because my framework was dealing with $50 million budget. My decisions were much bigger. So I said, let's just spend $85,000. Well, the opportunity cost of $85,000 at that time for us was massive because we were such a small company,
right?
In terms of our total money. So I hadn't made the transition to be an entrepreneur. I was still operating with this mindset of, I had a very big budget, I had a very big position, and I flew around and had all these meetings. So I hadn't made the transition to be a scrappy entrepreneur. It took me a while to make that transition, but by the time we burned through a lot of cash.
To get that bootstrap mentality.
Yeah.
DIY.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, so the younger entrepreneurs, the advantage that they have, that you guys have, is that you don't have the background of flying around in first class and having $2,000 dinners and wearing $5,000 suits. You don't have the luxury of that, right? You will
Right.
at the appropriate time, but you don't have that luxury when you're starting these businesses. Whereas I had experienced a life that was, very well rewarded, and then I was trying to be an entrepreneur, and I just mentally hadn't made that shift. I made the shift when it all started going to hell.
Yeah.
So we did not have money to pay, and by the time, so I had burned through the investor money, in which I had invested my own money, plus I made no money from the company for almost 3 years. Then I invested more money. I took a second mortgage on my house, or a line of credit, and invested that money. So I just kept doubling down. And at some point in time, we have as entrepreneurs, we have a responsibility to the family. And that is a line when there's a passion, there's a commitment to the venture, and you just want to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
And you lose that perspective, that rationality, that perspective, and you say, you know what, I'm going to make it work no matter what. And part of it is you're coming from a place of desperation. And that was a point that I wanted to make, is that now that I look back, there's a difference between hunger and pining. So I have a very different level of motivation now. I don't know how to stop. I am unstoppable, but for very different reasons. I don't have to go, but I want to go. Whereas at that time, I had to go. And it was coming from a place of scarcity as opposed to a place of sufficiency and a place of enoughness.
I was listening to one of your podcasts just because it ties quick to this point, and that's, you also made another fundamental mind shift change like that about your spending habits, right? And so you used to buy things because you wanted them, and if you didn't want to tell yourself I can't afford it, so instead you said I can't afford this, I just choose not to buy it.
That's correct. And that was, so again, going from this mindset of pining to sufficiency, pining to hunger, living from a place of I have enough, as opposed to feeling bad that I don't have enough.
Mm-hmm.
And at a time when I was near bankruptcy, and actually I contemplated bankruptcy, I developed this habit of going into any store and having this recantation that I can afford to buy anything I want to, I choose not to. I had no money in my pocket, but I convinced myself that I could if I wanted to. And, fast forward 10, 12 years, that actually came true, right? Just because of how the second opportunity that I was able to participate in, and we grew that, and we exited in 2013. And, 2014, I mean, yes, we still can go and buy whatever I want to, but I choose not to.
Right.
I drive a 2012 Toyota Camry.
Which is a great car.
It's a great car. I don't see any reason why. I see, no judgment, but I see people driving $300,000-$400,000 cars.
Yeah.
It's a depreciating asset.
It really is.
I don't understand why somebody would do that, but they get some joy out of that.
I just wanted to back up real fast and talk about, you said you identified the niche, right? What was that? Because I want entrepreneurs, I think a lot of them think that they know a niche market or a niche in the market, and then they go after it, because that's the best way to corner the market, is to find a niche in the market. What was the niche that you saw, and how did you go about pursuing that?
So our niche, I was in Indianapolis at the time, and I don't know if you've been to Indianapolis. Indianapolis is a racing town. It's a town of motorsports racing.
Big time.
Right? So
Indy 500.
Indy 500 and the family. So I got to know the people in the business behind the scenes, right? And NASCAR at that time was extremely hot. And it was like the fan base was just fanatical fan base. And they wanted to go to the races. And internet had come into being, but you still couldn't find a whole lot of information about races, about the venues, about where to sit, about then we found out that people that go to the races are also golfers. So if you wanted to play golf and you wanted to go to the race, you couldn't. You had to put it all together. Or you wanted a hotel. Tickets were hard to find. So it was a large base. It was a fanatical base, very engaged. They wanted to go to the races. So we just became everything they needed to go to the races.
Kind of like a travel agent.
It was like a Yahoo for racing,
Okay.
essentially,
Okay.
right? So you could buy packages, you could find out the schedules, you could find out the layouts, you could find out, we didn't have the sophistication at that time where I really wanted to have a camera view from every seat so that people see what my view will look like. But, at that time, the technology didn't exist. But now you can do that.
Almost.
So was that
Yeah.
one pivotal point when you spent that $85,000? Do you think that was your demise and your downfall from the company doing bad, or do you think it was other things as well?
It was, that was the underlying reason was the bigger issue.
Like
right?
that's just
So-
one example of probably many.
Yeah, so it was an example of how I made decisions to spend money very early on, because I just wanted to execute, and I wanted to say, yeah, this is the business that we are in. Let's just go ahead and do it. And my expectation, so this is the entrepreneurial mistake that all of us make, and you really have to be disciplined. So we all come up with projections. We do spreadsheet models. Okay, I have never seen a spreadsheet model that has revenues going up and down.
Right.
It always goes up and up and
Right.
up.
It's always the hockey stick.
It's
Yeah.
a hockey stick. Everybody has the same freaking
Yeah.
story, right?
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't happen that way.
Right.
So I had made assumptions of what the revenue picture would look like, and we were spending money assuming that we are going to have the revenue picture. Well, we didn't.
Yeah.
So then we had to backtrack. But there's a lag time. So you're burning cash and you're driving and fast, and all of a sudden you have to change directions or you have to cut back, and it's difficult to immediately execute that by the time you have burnt even more cash. And one thing that we did do was we did not burn any of our vendors. Like, we did not delay payments. We did not, there's an integrity piece to me in terms of the business, and that's why I kept putting more of my own money, because when we had shortfalls,
Right.
I'll bridge the gap.
Which hindered you in the long run. So what do you think your biggest lesson in that first company was that you took with you to be successful in your next one? Because everyone talks about, being successful, but it's the fall that really makes you successful, right? It's what the little things that you take out of that makes you successful, like what you learned from your downfall. What do you think that was?
That I wasn't that great.
A humbling experience.
Right.
It was a humbling experience. And really, it's there's a difference between being proud and being arrogant.
Right. Very fine line.
Very fine line, right? So I learned that I was arrogant, and that actually is based on insecurity. So when I'm not feeling enough, when we don't feel enough, we put on an act. And that act, other people can see is an act, and that is called arrogance. And when we are arrogant, we are acting beyond what we are capable of acting. And we're not seeking counsel and advice and not listening to people that we should, because we are operating outside of where we need to be.
Yeah, that's
and
good.
we are too stupid to admit that.
Right.
Because inside we know that I am way out there. But I can't tell anybody that, right? So it's very hard to become vulnerable. Whereas pride is, I know who I am. I know where I stand. And if I don't have an answer, I can find somebody that has the answer. And it's okay. There's no judgment. Nobody's going to say, you're stupid, or whatever the judgment is, that the conversation. So the biggest lesson that I learned that helped me get through and then get to the next is really, I'm grateful for my relationships. And it was people that I had treated with respect before, and I had built those relationships humbly and served them, no matter what was going on. Those are the people that, when I look back, they came to my rescue at times when I needed it. And I just kept going. So if you really bring it down to what was that one thing, what is that one thing? I just keep going. I just kept going, and I still do that.
So perseverance.
It's not just perseverance. It's taking a step.
What do you mean
Just
by that?
motion. Set in motion, right?
It's literally making a decision. So I made very crucial decisions at different times, and then I took a step. So when everything is saying, I don't know what to do, there is something that we can do. There's always that something that we can do. And sometimes something that we can do actually is not doing what we were planning to do. So if I had filed for bankruptcy like I was planning to do, I would have never gotten the job in the insurance business as an officer of a publicly traded insurance company, because it's not allowed.
Right.
So I listened and didn't do what I was originally thinking I needed to do, which was to declare bankruptcy to get out of it. So I got out of it, and I was able to participate in this beautiful upside that we were able to have over a period of about 12 years.
That's amazing. When you were going through that mind shift change from let's call it arrogance to pride, you said that came from deeper rooted issues. Arrogance in general comes from deeper rooted issues, why you would be arrogant and not prideful. What were you able to identify those in yourself and where they came from, and how did you address them to turn that arrogance into pride?
These are tough questions. My arrogance came from, ultimately where it comes from is there is a part of you that feels that I'm not enough. And people are going to find out that I'm not enough. So there is this outside act that you do that convinces the rest of the world that you're this awesome human being. But inside you have this conversation that's saying, you're not. So you keep acting out, which is not anchored in and rooted in this base. So you're just kind of flailing out there, right? So how long had I had it? I have no idea. I mean, it was there. But there was a part of, so I always did extremely well.
Like academically?
Academically, and, even, I was a professor, and I got teaching awards, and I published in top
You
journals.
got like, what, 4 degrees?
4 degrees, right? So, I kept doing well because I just kept pushing and kept pushing and kept pushing and kept doing. But no matter what I did, it was, so when I really look back at this, and it's taken me a long time to reconcile all of this, but in India, dads never tell kids, especially sons, I love you, ever.
That's so crazy to me.
Right?
I don't
And
understand.
it's a culture. It's just
Why,
culturally,
why
right?
is that?
Their dads didn't.
You just don't.
It's just a thing.
It's
Yeah.
a tradition.
Right? So it's just one of those things. And they don't say, I'm proud of you. They'll tell the whole freaking town how proud they are, but they don't tell you to your face, you know what, I'm really proud of what you're doing and who you are and what you've accomplished. Never.
Fascinating.
So there's a part of, when I really thought about it, there's a part of me that wanted that validation. So I just kept going, thinking that I'll get more validation. So I become the best PhD student. I get the best PhD student award. I get this and I get that. And, it didn't come. So then at some point in time when I was going through this whole business going down, I was hurt. Like I needed my parents here. And I called my parents. My mom had come to visit before, and my father hadn't. And I called them and said, I really would like for you to come. And my father was still kind of non-committal and didn't want to do that. And I got mad. Like, I was very hurt and I was mad. And I had met Audrey, who's my wife now. And, I said to my dad that I will never call you again about coming to the U.S. ever. So I went and I was talking to Audrey and I said, I had a call with my dad and I really wanted him to come and, he's still not coming. And I said, you know what, I'm done. Never again. And I'll never ask him. And she's like, well, let's think about this.
Yeah.
Because I was coming from this lot of hurt. And several years later, I realized that who needed to change wasn't my father. Who needed to change was me.
Right.
I had to accept. And that is one thing that I really wanted to share with your audience is that acceptance is such a powerful thing because it is a prerequisite for so many different things. So people say you should practice forgiveness. Well, in order to practice forgiveness, you have to accept the person. You have to accept the circumstances.
Right.
That you should practice gratitude in order to, for everything that you have to practice this, you should practice this. Anything that we need to practice, the underlying foundation of that is that we have to accept. We have to accept us. We have to accept our circumstances. We have to accept others where they are. Because everybody is doing the best they can in that moment. And if I live with that belief, everything flows beautifully. So my relationship with my father is brilliant now. It isn't because he has told me he loves me. He still hasn't. But I told him. I called him 4 years ago, Father's Day, 3 years ago. Because the first adult man to tell me I love you was Tony Robbins. And I was 54 years old.
Wow.
When he told me that.
That's crazy. Tony Robbins is the first person to tell you.
At
or the first
54
man.
years old.
At 54 of my age. And then it took me 3 years after that I thought about it for 3 more years to tell my father, I love you. And he has never said it. And it's okay. I don't have any issue with that. And I have never said it to him again either.
At what point did you become okay with that? Okay with the fact that he's never said I love you? And even deeper than that, stop seeking that or chasing that or looking for that validation maybe in the world or others?
Really, just recently, within the last few years.
After the Tony Robbins event?
Yeah, so, I've been to 23 Tony Robbins events.
Oh, my God.
Nice.
So, I needed to go through the onion. I call my head the onion, and I had to peel a lot of layers of the onion. Wow. So, yeah, it was some pretty intense work. And also, I went to the teachers that Tony has gone to do work on himself. And they're in India, and he has stayed there, and I stayed there for 3 weeks and did some pretty deep work.
So that was affecting your life really bad, whether you knew it or not. That was affecting you deeply in your relationships and your business mind and everything. And to get back and circle to the core of what was really going on might have been that same thing as your dad's never told you he loved you and never really wanted to, you felt like, commit to you and visit you and pay attention to you the way you think a father should. Do you ever think like maybe that was the whole core of everything? That's the center point right there.
It may have been.
Big question.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, so, here's the funny thing. So for me I had a beautiful life. Like, I grew up in an extremely loving family. My father is a very loving man.
Yes.
So there is no ounce of him that is bad, or like there are so many people that have been abused, and there's all kinds of bad things that have happened to kids. I didn't face any of that.
Right.
Not at all. So I grew up in a very nurturing, very loving environment. It's just culturally, it's not something that dads do. And to a kid growing up there, I guess I needed that. I don't know.
Yeah. So what was that paradigm shift, that aha moment where you're like, okay, I got this, and everything just kind of came to fruition, and all the pieces kind of started fitting, your relationship, your business? Because it sounds like everything was in shambles back then, right? Your relationship wasn't doing good, your business was doing good, then it fell apart, and it's just like now it feels like you're in a good place, you're in a good place as in. Like, when did that all come together where you're like, okay, I got this and I'm ready to go?
So when I had absolutely nothing left,
So rock bottom.
rock bottom. So everything that I thought I valued was stripped away. The only thing that I had left was my relationships and my 2 kids. That's it. There was nothing left.
And
I had to rebuild.
I heard you say that in this time of darkness or this time of trial, and correct me if I'm wrong, I heard you say that you weren't worried about the money.
Mm-mm.
And one thing I wanted to dig into on that, from your past experiences, your past wins, you had plenty, right? Had you learned the lessons to recreate money, to recreate wealth? Is that why you weren't worried about it? Or was there something deeper? Was it spiritual?
Yeah, it's a combination of things. So first of all, there's this thing about flow. You've heard about living in flow, right? So that is, so what I was experiencing was flow. Things were getting done, things were happening. I can't really reconstruct exactly how things transpired financially, but somehow they kept transpiring. And even during those times of that level of not having money, I made sure that kids' lives were never affected. And there was some person, we were living in an apartment complex at the time. We had shifted from a big house to an apartment complex. And somebody needed money for Christmas. She was in a bad shape financially, and she was, and I put, I don't know, a couple of $100 in an envelope, and I put it under her doormat from Secret Santa. I had no money, but somehow I was able to do that. And there was somebody else that needed some financial help, and I was able to arrange for that. So I kept going, and I knew that no matter what, my kids cannot suffer. I mean, there is some instinct, it's divine guidance, God, whatever you want to call it. There was something that kept me grounded, that no matter what happens, the kids will be fine. And I was okay with that. After that, I was okay. So it was really just knowing that everything will be fine.
That's amazing. I want to touch on something, and I don't remember if I heard it from your TED Talk speech or your keynote last week. But when you said, you actually said that there was another man who told you that they loved you, and that was yourself. And that was an exercise that you had advised the audience to do, which is look in the mirror and tell yourself, I love you. What did that do for you, and why would someone want to do that?
Because most of us feel that we are flawed. In some shape or form, we feel that we are flawed. Whether it is what we have heard throughout our lives, or it is our perceptions of how we look. So one of the things that I've done, which is extremely helpful, is I close my eyes and I, just breathe, and then I do a body scan. I don't do it now, but in the beginning I did, where I'll do a body scan, and I'll literally go from the top of my head all the way to the bottom of my feet, and critically look at every part of me physically and see what areas of my body I judge. Am I too fat? Am I too short? Is my nose too big? It's whatever it is that we are judging, because we are silently judging ourselves all day long. Thousands of negative thoughts come into our heads every day, and nobody else is listening to them. That's why we keep hammering ourselves all day long. And we don't take the time to say, you know what? Even if you are flawed, I still love you. I love you the way you are, not a future version of you, not something that I want you to be, just exactly where you are right now in this moment. That is so powerful
Yeah.
to hear that. It took me a while to be able to say that, to straight look into my eyes and say that. I couldn't say it. I used to cry. And the funny thing is, or ironic thing is that to most people out in the world, I have my shit together.
Yeah.
And I'm
Right.
pretty grounded in all of this stuff, right? So, but there's this turmoil going on that I'm managing through, and it's just, processing all of that and keep going.
So what's the best technique that you found to help you with this? You know how some people tap on themselves and tell them that they're good enough, stuff like that, meditation. What's your
That's what I got
best
this
technique?
for.
Yeah. So it's really the easiest is that we have 5 senses. So meditation is really about presence. It's about awareness. That's all it is. It's not about trying to control thinking. It's not trying to control anything. It's just creating awareness of that. So it doesn't have to be that we have to create 15 minutes every day or 30 minutes every day. And if we don't, then we start beating ourselves up and saying, we missed it, or we fall asleep, or, it becomes a pressure point as opposed to something relaxing and something that grounds us. So what I've done is, just while driving, I will all of a sudden pay attention to what I'm hearing, just the sounds. And all of a sudden I'm aware of the sounds. Or I'll decide that I'm going to become aware of my breathing. So then I'll become aware of my breathing, the air going in, air coming out, air going in different parts of my body. I visualize all of that, just creating that awareness. The same thing with seeing, with the eyes. What am I seeing right now? Just pay attention. And then touch. Sometimes I'll just sit here and I'll just touch my fingers, because then I feel it's the awareness, right? So we have all these senses. We have the touch, we have the smell, we have the, we have the taste. So we can do different exercises anywhere, just to create heightened awareness of our 5 senses. And that's meditation.
Yeah.
I want to make a quick anecdote just to reinforce that, because a lot of people, because I'm a big meditator, and the first time I went over to your place and spoke to you, you actually told me about this, and it wasn't just a game changer for me, but it's a game changer for anyone who's asked me about meditation, because my answer for meditation always has been throw on 432 hertz or throw on a 10-minute guided meditation and clear your mind and don't think about anything except for breathe in, breathe out. And it was always that segmented 10 to 15 minutes a day. Well, then when you told me this, now I can go through my day, and whenever I remember, just clear my mind and rub my hand on the surface of a table, or focus on my breath for a few seconds, or look at the vivid detail of a painting and not think about anything else. So for all the listeners out there who are getting into meditation or already meditate, it doesn't have to be a segmented 10 minutes throughout your day. It could be any point using any of your senses to pick up on minute details, and in picking up of those details, you're clearing out your mind. You're slowing the process down.
That's it.
And you've said
Yeah.
it many a time. Each controlled breath is like your brain, your mind doing a bicep curl.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so
Yeah.
people go to the bathroom and they're taking their devices with them, their iPhones. Don't
Guilty.
take that. Just
Guilty as charged.
guilty.
Right.
Yeah.
So just sit there and don't have a device, and pay attention to the sounds, pay attention to whatever. Just create awareness of where you're at. And that is a form of meditation.
So I'm very curious about something. Do you tell your kids you love them?
All the time.
Okay, so I was just wondering if it came over to you too, because I do the same thing. My dad never told me much. He does now. Now we're at a great place, but when I was younger, I used to always look for him in the stands for sporting events. Never there. High school, I was like, he'll be there, never there. college, I was like, oh, he'll be in the stands. Never there. But I always lurked for that. I always wanted that so bad. I always thought I'd see him in there. And it really got to me. And that was just some of the things I dealt with when I was younger, because I didn't feel the love. You know what I mean? And now I just tell my kids all the time, like, I'm so proud of you. That hit you did today was incredible. You know, the hard work's paying off. And sometimes I feel like I overdo it because I didn't get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. No, we are actually, so when I met Audrey, she had a habit of saying, I love you, when every single time there's a phone call, every single time she will see her nephew and niece, every interaction she had with her parents, every interaction she had with her brother, she will say, I love you. So we just started saying it.
Yeah.
And that's what we know now. Almost every text that I have with the kids, it's love you. You know,
Yeah.
so it could be 50 times a day.
Yeah,
And
that's great. I love
love
that.
you. So because it's true. It's
Yeah.
not, just
Yeah.
because I said it to you once doesn't mean that it doesn't need to be said again.
And you never know when your last time is going to be.
Right.
So.
And you know, I was so there was some event, a business mastery event. There was like 1,500 people, and Tony Robbins, and you know, they asked me to speak on stage about something, and I spoke about how profound it was that Tony had said to me, I love you. And after that, there were, I don't know, 200 guys that were standing in line to tell me that they have never heard from their dads, I love you. And what a big deal it was that I talked about that. I mean, it's a thing.
That's awesome. Yeah.
It's a thing, man.
Yeah, and it's, you know, there's other factors like that can contribute to a child's life. You have the conversation of nature versus nurture. There's things like that. There's environmental things that could really mess up a child, and that's when you get that hardwiring in your brain formulated. So I want to use this as an opportunity to pivot into something amazing you're doing for children over in India, and that's called Feed a Billion. Because why feed a million when you could feed a billion? Let's target an eighth of the world's population, right?
Right.
So what is that? Where did that come from? And question mark.
So actually, there are not quite a billion, but about 800 million people in the world that are food insecure every day. So every day, there are 800 million people that are not able to eat what they need to eat. Right? So, you know, Feed a Billion is addressing the size.
Right.
So that's one piece. And the other is, as we have done work, and I've learned about the topic of hunger and food insecurity, it's a very complicated topic because it depends on which part of the world you're in. Are you talking about adults? You're talking about kids? Are you talking about just food? Or you're talking about nutrition? And really, the way I looked at it is that, to me, food is love. And when we want to celebrate, you know, somebody gets a promotion, you get a big deal, what do? We go to dinner to celebrate, right? We go out. And there's so much celebration that goes on. We have Thanksgiving, we have Christmas dinner. You know, there's a lot of celebration that goes on. And there are people that just don't have the opportunity to eat. And then as we did more work and had a chance to work in person, one-on-one with people, you know, there is, and I've met with people that grew up hungry and are now 30, 40 years later, and you start talking to them about what they experienced when they experienced food insecurity, the emotional impact of that and what that makes you feel like as a human being, it's bad. It doesn't go away. It doesn't go away. So because they feel like worthless, right? That I don't even deserve to be fed. I don't even deserve to have food. So there is an emotional side to it. And then it has a correlation with trafficking, which not many people are talking about. So, you know, we have started to provide nutritious shakes to 425 girls every day in India. And we are keeping them out of being trafficked. I mean, because right outside of the area where we are doing it, the trafficking is 60% of the girls.
And these things happen everywhere. There's
Everywhere.
food insecurities everywhere. Right in our own backyard. I mean, Uganda, everywhere around the world, there's food insecurities. There's
In
people
Atlanta.
getting trafficked everywhere.
In
Atlanta
Atlanta.
is one of the biggest trafficking places
It's
in
the
the United
center in the
States.
United States.
Yeah.
And food insecurity is everywhere. I've delivered food in all. You will be shocked at where I've delivered food. I've delivered food in Buckhead.
Yeah, we do Bankhead and we do Clarkston every Sunday for Change to Humanity. And Amazon now, which was Whole Foods before, gave us the food that they're wasting
That's
and
cool.
throwing out just to give to them. Einstein Bagels, some of these other people.
That's
Instead of
awesome.
just throwing the food in the dumpster, they give it to us so that we can give out to these people, and that's
love
what I
that.
wish more people would get behind, because there's so much waste of produce and food on a daily basis. Like, why can we not get this from these big conglomerate companies and use it to actually feed our starving people?
It's happening. I mean, Feeding America does that.
Yeah.
And they 80 odd % of their
Slowly
total
but
food.
surely.
They that's all excess food. About 80% of the food that they distribute, and they distributed, I think, 4 billion meals last year. So the issue is that in the U.S., there's 42 million people that are food insecure.
But
It's a lot.
But for the listeners, that's not what you're doing. You've created like a meal replacement shake using European whey milk.
Right. So we are doing 3 different things. One is that program, which is currently going on in India, where we are providing the nutritional shake, because what we needed to provide was nutrition, not just food.
Right.
And if we
That's
had
important.
provided a meal to the girls, then the family deducts a meal from them, because the family says you got fed.
Oh, wow.
Whereas the shake is not considered quote unquote a meal, so they still are able to eat at least something at home.
Oh,
So
wow.
it is an incremental meal, which is giving them all the nutrients. So that's one. The second is, just very recently, just 2 days ago, I sent the funds. We are funding building of a kitchen in Kenya, in Nairobi, and it is providing lunch food to school-going kids, because the government doesn't have a program. They're like we have here, kids get lunch. So if there's a child coming in hungry, they don't learn because they're hungry.
All right.
And so this person that I got connected with, she started just providing meals, and it has grown. And now she's building a kitchen which will serve 20,000 meals per day.
Wow.
That's
So,
awesome.
so
Congratulations.
we are funding part of that kitchen. That's the second thing. And then third thing we are doing is we have donated to Georgia Food Bank and the Valdosta Food Bank, and we provide funding to these organizations because we want to do support here in the U.S. at home.
The world
also.
needs more people like you. That's all I gotta say.
Agreed. Well, we're running out of time, so let's wrap this up. Do you guys have any more questions?
I got one more thing. My biggest thing, I've heard this a lot, is Tony Robbins, right? You've brought him up a lot. So obviously he's a huge influential person in your life. What's the biggest thing you've ever learned from him?
I didn't know much about him or his work, so I ended up there in 2013, a few months before our company was in the process of being sold. And what I observed, there were about 5,600 people in the audience, and nobody was in their cell phones. And nobody had ever asked the audience to turn their cell phones off. And I was mesmerized by that in this day and age. And then I watched it very closely, and I saw that he interacted with people with absolutely no judgment. So when in 2014, our company was sold, and I was trying to figure out what do I want to do, and I decided that I really needed to spend time in personal development. My wife and I did that, and because we had the luxury of time and we could afford to do that, so we just went in and we went to everything, all the events. And I said to my wife in the beginning of that journey in summer of 2014, I distinctly remember telling her that I said, I will live with no judgment. That was a decision I made. And I have implemented that.
That's
I live with no judgment.
That's awesome. And then one more thing. Sorry, guys. One more thing. But so you learned all that from Tony. Do you think he's learned anything from you? Like, you know what I mean?
Have you met him personally?
Oh, yeah, many, many times.
Okay.
Yeah.
He said he loved him.
Yeah.
Well, you can go to his events and there's 10,000
Oh, I
people there, and you
know.
could walk away loving
But I
him.
don't think he would say I love you.
No,
just
no,
I
no,
love
he-
Tony Robbins. I've never even seen him in
Yeah.
person.
No, Tony told me that I love you.
Okay.
Right. So no, I don't know. I don't know what he learned from me.
Yeah.
But I played full out when I went, and I was always in the front, and I screamed and I jumped and
Yeah.
I went all in. I played full out. So yeah, there was a time when that needed to happen in my life, and that time was over. So I'm not like many people are addicted to that environment and addicted to going, and I'm not there. I'm done. I
Yeah.
finished that journey. It's over. So I got what I needed to get out of that.
So we talked about the mistakes from your first business that maybe translated helped you avoid similar mistakes going forward. But what mistakes did you make in your first marriage that you learned to help make this one work?
Really pay attention to what she's experiencing and what my first wife was going through. I never had a true appreciation for everything that she did and went through to support the family. She was a stay-at-home mom, and I was running around doing my things, and I thought my job was to have a job, make money, support the family, and that's it. But it's so much more than that. It's to acknowledge her, it's to support her, to give her what she needed from me, which was to be there, the presence, and do it without judgment, do it unconditionally, do it. So the reason I have this incredible relationship with my wife now is because I love her. And I love her unconditionally, and I support her, and she has a stressful job and very busy, but I am present, and I listen and engage and participate, and she is the most important person in my life. And everything else stops. If she needs something, everything else stops.
It's amazing.
It is amazing.
Yeah.
And one last
Yeah, go
question. In your first marriage, do you feel like that was transactional in a sense, where you pay the bills, you provide this type of life, and in return she manages the household, does whatever she did, and when your end fell through, when you went into debt, she didn't stick around? Was that because for lack of a better word, like you had failed in your end of the transaction?
I don't think so. I mean, I would say that it wasn't transactional. It was, because we had a great time, and we have 2 kids from that marriage, and great kids. So to be honest with you, everybody that was in our circle, they were like, what?
Yeah.
What? You 2 are getting divorced? Like, how did that happen? So no, it wasn't like that at all. It was timing. It was.
You don't think maybe you worked too much, paid more attention to work than her?
I work too much. And,
Yeah.
that's one thing that, when you're in your 20s and your 30s and you're just going, go.
It's a hard balance.
It's a balance, right? So because you want to build a life, and you want to conquer the world, and you want to create your
Right.
kingdom, and you want to be the big shit guy, and you want to do this,
Yeah.
and you want to make money, and you want to create your name,
Yeah.
and you want to do all that at all cost. Well, let me tell you, all of that is not worth it at all.
Mm-hmm. That's
Not
what
at
I've
all.
experienced.
In other
too.
words,
No.
watch your girl.
Watch your,
Yeah.
Watch your girl.
Pay attention to what she is saying, but more importantly, to what she is not saying. And if you can't sense from her what she is not saying, you're not connected. Because she is not going to say to you what she really wants to say. Because she doesn't want to hurt your feelings. Because she loves you, she cares about you. She is not going to say what she really wants to say, but you have to be perceptive to figure that out. And if you don't, it's over.
I love it. Well, this has been amazing. And I think, what I'm taking away is through the trajectory of your story, there's been 3 fixed variables: the love for your kids, acceptance of your situation, and that make the decision and take the step. Yeah. And everything else was variable. You started with a weaker mindset. You started with a $multi-hundred-billion business that failed, and a wife. All 3 of those got removed from your life, and it was just your mindset and your children, and you rebuilt them all up. You built a strong mindset. You rebuilt a $multi-hundred-million company and sold it. And then now, and you're doing the feed a billion thing, and now you got a loving wife. And you were able, by switching your mindset from scarcity to abundance, you were able to recreate the life you wanted and get out of the life that wasn't meant for you. Yes. And a lot of people, anyone listening, I want, no matter where you are in your life, whether it's a good point or a bad point, if it's in a bad point, listen to this again, because it's all about self-love and accepting yourself, accepting your outcomes, accepting your surroundings, and being able to persevere, make that decision and take that step no matter what. And I think your story is a marquee example of that. I'm honored that you came in and were able to deliver that information. This was great. And I usually ask our guests for some clippable, what is your 3 whatever for the end, for some clippable content, but I think it's suffice to say that we've got enough.
We've got a lot. Yeah.
I think we got a clip.
Do you have any closing notes, clippable content?
Yeah. The one, if there's one thing you can remember out of all of this, is practice acceptance. Practice acceptance of yourself. Practice acceptance of your circumstances. That doesn't mean you like them. That doesn't mean you don't want to change them. All that means is you accept them. And accept others where they are, not a future version. There are so many people that are in relationships where they are in love with the future version of the person. How are you going to get there if you don't love the current version?
Right.
So acceptance
and gratitude, absolutely. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that, along with AJ, Hustle Up may be in the works of planning something called the Unplug Summit. And that's we'll have more information on that, but essentially we're going to be creating a weekend in the near future where everyone's going to unplug. There'll be some keynotes, some team building exercises, leadership exercises, and it'll be an opportunity for you to put down your phone, put down your technology, and learn how to be a human being again. Hustle up, and that's right. And so, AJ, where can people get involved with Feed a Billion or get involved with you? Where can they reach out to you?
Just AJ@feedabillion.org is the easiest way.
And we'll have that in the description as well.
Sure.
Awesome. Guys, thank you so much for listening, watching. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell, leave a comment. If you're listening on the audio platform, leave a rating, leave a comment. We love you guys. We'll be having an event March 31st. I'm Jonathan.
I'm Clint.
I'm Matt.
I'm AJ.
That's right. Until next time, hustle up.